The restaurant had a cozy, warm atmosphere. The soft hum of light jazz filled the air, and the dim lighting seemed perfect for hiding secrets in every corner. Chloe sat by the window, nervously running her fingers along the rim of her wine glass. Across from her was Joe, her new friend, or perhaps something more. His casual, confident grin made her heart race. Tonight, Joe had brought her to this quiet, hidden spot in the city. She felt safe here, convinced there was no chance of running into anyone who might recognize her. Or so she thought. Chloe had taken extra care with her makeup before meeting Joe, double-checking every detail. She understood the power of looking perfect. As Joe excused himself to use the restroom, Chloe adjusted a stray strand of hair and lightly touched the corners of her mouth to ensure her lipstick was still flawless. Yet, as the moments passed, a nagging thought crept into her mind. Joe was taking longer than usual. Maybe it was just her nerves, she reasoned, but a slight chill ran down her spine. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and her heart skipped a beat. It was Alan, her husband. The call caught her off guard since he was supposed to be at work. Clearing her throat, she answered in her sweetest tone, "Yes, honey?" Alan's voice was calm, but carried an edge she couldn't quite identify. "Where are you right now?" he asked. A bead of sweat formed on Chloe's temple. She let out a nervous laugh. "I'm on a date," she joked, trying to sound playful. "Just kidding. I'm catching up with some friends from the conservatory." There was a brief silence on the other end. Then, Alan's voice cut through sharply. "Unfortunately, it's not a joke. Turn around, Chloe." Her heart stopped. Slowly, she turned her head, and there, in the dimly lit corner of the restaurant, sat Alan. He gave her a small, deliberate wave, his face unreadable. Chloe's throat went dry. Gripping her phone tightly, she whispered, "Alan, why are you here? Why aren't you at work?" Alan's voice remained calm, though his words carried weight. "Change of plans. I thought I'd grab a quick bite. Imagine my surprise when I saw my wife here, looking a little too cozy with someone else." His words hit Chloe like a punch. Her pulse quickened as she tried to come up with an explanation. "Wait, what? You think I'm on a date?" She forced a laugh. "What about you? You're sitting with that pretty woman over there." Alan chuckled softly. "That's Jessica, my lawyer." Chloe's stomach dropped, leaving her scrambling for words. She wasn't about to let Alan or his lawyer get the better of her. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders and walked over to their table. Her heels clicked softly against the floor as she approached, trying to appear calm. "Well, hello there," she said politely, nodding at Jessica. "Jessica, right?" Jessica nodded back, her sharp gaze steady. Chloe turned to Alan with a sweet yet challenging tone. "Honey, I have to ask, why are you having dinner with a lawyer? Did something happen that you haven't told me about?" Alan leaned back, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Well, Chloe," he began slowly, "let's just say I'm in an awkward situation. It's a little embarrassing, really. I never thought I'd be sitting here with my lawyer, but here I am. I just hope I'm not getting fitted for reindeer antlers this Christmas." His words stung, but Chloe forced a smile. "That sounds awful, honey." She turned to Jessica with a light laugh. "What do you think, Jessica? Imagine a husband who works night shifts but secretly spies on his wife. A little paranoid, don't you think?" Jessica's smile was cool and composed. "Life has a way of surprising us, which is why I help couples through times like these." Chloe chuckled softly, though her heart raced. "So, a divorce lawyer, huh?" She turned back to Alan, her smile unwavering. "Alan, I'd hate to see you jump to conclusions. It's just dinner with an old friend. Don't you think you're being a little impulsive?" Alan took a sip of his drink, his eyes fixed on Chloe. Setting his glass down, he smiled calmly. "You know I'm a rational man, Chloe. I don't make decisions on impulse. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us about Joe? Is he just a friend, or is there more to it?" Chloe kept her composure, her smile steady. "Alan, I told you, Joe is a friend from the conservatory. He's a brilliant pianist. We're just meeting to talk about music. Creative people like us, musicians, artists, we tend to be a little more expressive. But that's all it is. Alan raised an eyebrow, chuckling softly. I suppose I should hope his hands stay on the piano keys. Chloe laughed, waving dismissively. Jessica, you might want to note how your client loves to provoke. Honestly, Alan, that innuendo is bold. Jessica shrugged, observing the exchange without much reaction. Alan's expression turned serious, though his slight smile remained. So, Chloe, he said firmly, you're telling us that you and Joe are just friends? No intimate involvement. Chloe glanced between Alan and Jessica, a playful glint in her eye. Alan, we're just friends. Pure and simple. Unless, of course, Jessica here considers a love of music grounds for filing an infidelity suit. Chloe laughed lightly, glancing at Jessica, who chuckled softly and shook her head. Oh, I wouldn't go that far, Chloe, Jessica said with a smile. I think I can handle the situation without making it too dramatic. Alan smirked, clearly amused. The whole scene seemed almost funny to him. Chloe's quick defenses, her breezy responses. All right, honey, Alan said, leaning back in his chair. But you know, I'd love to hear what Joe thinks about your friendly relationship. Crossing his arms, he added, it would be interesting to get his take on things. Chloe kept her chin up, her voice steady. Of course, Alan, she replied smoothly. Once Joe gets back, I'm sure he'll back me up. Not sure why he's taking so long, though. She forced a small smile, but her fingers tightened around her wine glass. Before anything else could happen, Alan pulled out his phone, his expression unreadable. Actually, Chloe, he began, tapping on the screen, we don't need to wait for Joe. He might show up eventually, but I thought you want to hear what he has to say right now. Chloe's brow furrowed as Alan lifted his phone slightly. Jessica tilted her head, her expression calm but curious. A recording began to play. Chloe and Jessica exchanged quick glances, bracing themselves for what was about to unfold. First, Alan's voice came through, clear and casual. Hey, man, is that cute redhead over there your friend? Joe's laugh followed, easygoing and a little too comfortable. You could say that, he replied. But what's it to you? Alan chuckled lightly, keeping his tone conversational. I've just always been amazed at how some guys make it look so easy to pick up women. Maybe you could give me some tips. Huh? Doesn't come naturally to me. Joe laughed again, his tone smug. Oh, man, I don't know if you can teach it. Some of us just have it, you know? Alan's voice shifted, still playful but slightly more pressing. Hey, so tell me, people say redheads are the hottest in bed. That true? You get anywhere with her. Joe didn't hesitate. His laugh was low and proud. Oh, they're wild. All right. That one, man, she does things. Let's just say if I'm not careful, she might break me. She bounces like crazy. There was a brief silence in the recording before Alan's voice responded. Casual but pointed. Wow, lucky you. Joe's laugh came again, self-satisfied. Lucky? I'd say so. Just hoping she doesn't wear me out tonight. You know what I mean? The recording ended abruptly. The soft hum of jazz and quiet conversation in the restaurant seemed amplified in the silence that followed. Chloe's cheeks flushed as her fingers tightened around her glass. Forcing herself to sit up straighter, she cleared her throat, struggling to keep her expression composed. Her mind raced for something to say, but the weight of Alan's gaze and the lingering words from the recording seemed to anchor her in place. Jessica glanced between the two, her composed demeanor unshaken, though a faint tension hung in the air. Alan leaned back in his chair, slipping his phone into his pocket, his expression calm but with an edge of triumph. So, Chloe, he said, his tone steady, care to explain that? Jessica's gaze was sharp, her loyalty instincts clearly analyzing every reaction. Alan, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair, watching Chloe with an amused, expectant look. Chloe forced a smile, though her voice wavered slightly. "Well, Alan," she began, trying to maintain her composure, "I think Joe was just, showing off. Men say all kinds of things when they think they're bonding with other guys. He was clearly just joking around." Alan raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a slight smirk. "Joking, huh? It sounded pretty detailed for a joke. But I'm all ears, Chloe. Go ahead, explain away." Chloe straightened her back, forcing a small laugh, though her cheeks were flushed. "Alan, really," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Joe is just a bragger. He loves to joke around and exaggerate. Honestly, the guy has a wild imagination. He probably thought he was just being funny." She turned to Jessica, hoping to find an ally. "Jessica, can we really take the wild claims of a guy who talks like an idiot as proof of anything? That's ridiculous. People say all kinds of things." Jessica's expression didn't soften. Instead, she gave Chloe a tight-lipped smile, looking mildly entertained. "I think I've seen enough for one night," Jessica said coolly. "This isn't my usual kind of event, but I have to thank Alan for inviting me. It was eye-opening." She nodded toward Alan, her tone sharp yet professional. Chloe's face grew tense. But before she could respond, she noticed Joe standing at the edge of the restaurant, scanning the tables with a frazzled and confused look. Alan gave a polite smile and gestured toward him. "Looks like your friend is back, Chloe. I think he's looking for you." Chloe called out to Joe, and he rushed over, clearly frustrated. Without even noticing Alan and Jessica at first, Joe burst out, "Chloe, you won't believe it. Some idiot propped the restroom doors shut and had me stuck in there forever." He glanced around the table and quickly narrowed his eyes at Alan. "It was you, wasn't it? Are you nuts?" Alan merely raised an eyebrow, smiling without a word. Chloe shot Joe a pleading look and said, "Joe, let me introduce you. This is Alan, my husband. Why don't you explain to him that you're just—" But before she could finish, Joe's face went pale as realization struck. His expression shifted to sheer panic. "Oh, crap," he stammered, his eyes darting between Alan and Chloe. "I think I just heard my phone ringing. Better go check on that." With a clumsy nod, he practically bolted to his table, grabbed his belongings, and rushed out of the restaurant without a backward glance. Chloe stared after him, speechless, her face a mixture of shock and anger. Alan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Chloe," he said with a smirk, "it looks like Joe might be a decent lover, but he's a pretty unreliable friend. Seems he's not willing to stand by you in a tough spot." Jessica glanced at Alan, then back at Chloe, as she rose from her chair and gathered her things. Alan stood as well, giving Chloe one last look. "Anyway," he said, his voice calm but firm, "it's about time to pay up and head out, don't you think?" Jessica nodded in agreement, and the two started making their way toward the exit. Alan paused for a moment, glancing back at Chloe with a half-smile. "Oh, and honey," he added, "you'll be covering dinner with Joe out of your own pocket." Chloe's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to nod. She called over the waiter and handed him her card, maintaining as much composure as she could. But when the waiter swiped it, he frowned and shook his head. "Sorry, ma'am. It's not working." At that moment, Alan and Jessica were passing by on their way out. Chloe turned to Alan, her voice tense. "Alan, my card isn't working. Did you do this? Are you really just going to leave me here like this?" Alan shrugged, looking back at her with an almost sympathetic smile. "Good luck, Chloe," he said calmly before walking out the door with Jessica. "I didn't think it would be an issue, Chloe," Alan said, his voice calm but laced with sarcasm. "I just figured your friend would take care of it." "Damn it, Alan," Chloe hissed, her voice barely controlled. "You're really going to leave me here without any money?" Alan's smile widened slightly. "Come on, Chloe. You're a resourceful woman. I'm sure you'll figure something out." With that, he turned and walked out, Jessica by his side. As they exited, Jessica glanced at Alan. "I'll have the papers finalized by tomorrow morning," she said matter-of-factly. Alan nodded. "Thank you, Jessica." He exhaled deeply, ready to go home. Chloe, meanwhile, stayed behind at the restaurant, left to face the bill and the fallout from the disastrous evening. When Alan got home, the weight of the day settled heavily on him. He moved through the house slowly, tossing a few essentials into a suitcase. Today had been harder than he expected, and though part of him wanted to pack everything tonight, he decided it could wait until tomorrow. A few days at his brother's place sounded like exactly what he needed. Barely an hour later, the front door swung open, and Chloe stormed in. Her eyes flashed with frustration as she set her purse down with a loud thud and made a beeline for Alan. "What was that all about, Alan?" she fumed. "You had to make a cheap show out of everything? Dragging your lawyer along, setting me up like that. Do you know how humiliating it was?" She threw her hands up, her words tumbling out in anger. "And to leave me there without any way to pay? They were about to make me wash dishes or clean toilets. Thank God my friend Emma came to help me out." Alan let out a tense laugh, a habit of his in stressful situations. It wasn't meant to be funny, but it hit Chloe the wrong way. "What's so funny?" she demanded. Alan raised a hand, trying to keep his voice even. "Chloe," he began slowly, "what instrument do you play?" Chloe blinked, thrown off by the odd question. What does that have to do with anything?" "You know I play the flute, Alan." Alan looked at her, his smile twisting bitterly. "Then maybe you should go find your lover and play a skin flute." His voice dripped with sarcasm as he gave her a mocking bow. "Might suit you better. And please leave me alone." Chloe's face reddened, her fists clenching at her sides. "Damn you, Alan. Are you serious? You bring your lawyer to humiliate me. And now this? Do you want a divorce? You're just going to throw it all away because of something stupid Joe said? You're so petty." Alan felt a sharp pang in his chest. "Chloe," he said softly, "I did love you once. And maybe you love me too. We were a great couple. But now—" He shook his head. "Now it's clear this means nothing to you. So yeah, I want a divorce because my wife apparently prefers piano players." The word struck hard, and Chloe's face twisted in anger. Without thinking, she grabbed her purse and hurled it across the room, aiming straight at him. "Go to hell, Alan. Stop insulting me. I don't deserve this," she yelled, her voice cracking. Alan's face hardened, his patience finally snapping. He picked up his sports bag, slung it over his shoulder, and looked back at her one last time. With a curt, polite bow, he turned and walked out of the house without another word. The next morning, Chloe opened the door to find Jessica standing there, holding a thick stack of papers. Chloe's face hardened as Jessica extended the documents wordlessly. Without hesitation, Chloe snatched them from her, her jaw clenched. Jessica's calm, unbothered expression only fueled her determination. Chloe didn't like to lose, ever. She considered herself smart and clever, capable of navigating whatever Alan threw her way. As soon as Jessica left, Chloe got to work. By that afternoon, she had already hired a well-regarded lawyer and started preparing her case. She had one mean strategy: to portray Alan as a jealous, overreacting husband. After all, she reasoned, he had only caught her having dinner with Joe, a friend, a fellow musician. Maybe Alan had just let his jealousy spiral out of control. But as she thought it over, a chill crept down her spine. How had Alan known about her meeting with Joe? She'd been so careful, hadn't she? Chloe racked her brain, trying to remember if she let anything slip, but came up empty. Pushing the thought aside, she focused on her confidence, convinced she could make the whole mess disappear in court. The day of the trial arrived, and Chloe sat at the defendant's table, cool and composed. She and her lawyer had crafted a strong argument. Alan, they would insist, was simply a paranoid husband who had taken things too far. But as the proceedings unfolded, Chloe's confidence began to falter. Alan's lawyer stepped forward with something Chloe hadn't anticipated: hard evidence. Printed screenshots from Chloe's own phone. Messages between her and Joe. Ones that went far beyond friendly banter. Chloe's face flushed, and she hissed under her breath, "Damn it, Alan. You went through my phone? That's a complete violation of privacy." But it didn't stop there. Alan had one more ace up his sleeve: a witness. He called their neighbor, a retired man who lived across the street, to the stand. The man testified that he had seen Joe come into the house one evening when Alan was working the night shift. Chloe's lawyer tried to discredit the witness, but the damage was done. Alan's case was rock solid, and Chloe's defense unraveled. By the end of the trial, the verdict was clear: Alan had won. Afterward, Chloe caught up to Alan in the courthouse hallway. Stepping in front of him, she softened her voice for the first time in weeks. "Alan, please, can we talk? Maybe we don't have to end things like this. I made mistakes, but we had something special. Isn't there any way we could try again?" Alan's expression remained cold, untouched by her plea. "Chloe, you didn't just make mistakes, you lied. Even now, standing here, you're trying to twist things." He shook his head. "I loved you, but betrayal? That's something I can't forgive." Chloe's face fell as she watched him turn and walk away, leaving her to face the full weight of her choices. The game she had tried to play had come back to haunt her, and now there was nothing left to do but live with the consequences. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. Drop your reactions in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Wishing you all a fantastic day and the best of luck.